Hello, and welcome to a Purpose Driven Marriage podcast. We are Duane, Nadine Stewart, and we love any and all things marriage. You've tuned into the right place if you're looking for actionable, practical tips to help you overcome real life obstacles common to real relationships. We're here to help you strive for a marriage as God has designed it and not as the world has defined it. Because why settle for a good marriage when you can have a great one? So, as we record this episode of the podcast, we're actually sitting in a hotel room downtown.
What did we do last night?
Well,
not what you think. It's not what you think.
Well, even if it was what they think, we're not talking about it on this episode. That's for a future episode.
Yes.
So actually, we decided to get a hotel room because we need to do our annual goal setting, and our business meeting is what we call it. None of our friends ever believed that.
Doing the business.
They said, "Yeah, right,
getting that business done."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so last night we went ahead and we set our goals, and this is something that we've been doing. I've lost track how many years we've been doing this. It's been a really long time.
It's been a while. I mean,
yeah.
We've been setting goals for quite a while. I think we took a slight hiatus during COVID, because things were just crazy.
Yeah.
But before that, and now most recently, we've been setting goals because it's an important task for us. I mean, we'll talk about why it's important and what it's really done for us as a couple, but it really just helps us to be more aligned with each other, to really understand like what's important to you, what do you want to accomplish in life, what are your dreams and those types of things, and that's what we talked about last night.
Yeah, and I mean, as we record this episode, we're at the end of 2022, and so when we're recording this, but by the time it will air, it will be mid-January, right? And so by that time, people, are probably wondering, okay, why are they doing a goal setting episode when, it's already mid-January? But the thing is, one thing that we want to stress is that there's no best time to set a goal, right? The best time to really work together as a couple in dreaming together and setting goals together is when you guys finally come around to doing it.
Yep.
It does not have to be the end of a year or the beginning of a year. It makes sense, right? Like for many people, it just makes sense to, a new year is a new chapter, or for some people, an entirely new book. But you don't have to wait. Like if you are listening to this episode in May, don't wait until, don't wait another
December.
like 7 months, 8 months to start doing this. It doesn't matter when you hear this episode, when you feel enticed to go ahead and start setting goals as a couple. The most important thing is just to do it, to get it done. Because honestly, it's not like you're only setting goals for that year, right? Like you're setting lifetime goals. You're setting goals for 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30, whatever. Right. And so it doesn't matter what month of the year you decide to start. The most important thing is to just start.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
And so last night, go ahead, honey.
So last night we kind of walked through some of the things that we want to accomplish for next year. And we'll, we're not going to talk about those things specifically, but we want to really just talk through like, why are goals important? What does that do for you as a couple? And then, how do you kind of follow through with those things and ensure that those things are accomplished, whether it be a short-term goal within the next 6 months to a year, or is it a 10-year goal, which is a commitment, right? That's a commitment to kind of staying together for a long time. But it was interesting because I was reading through, and I'm just going to throw out some stats about goals. A blog most recently, and it said that 3% of the population sets goals.
Did you say 3%?
3%. It seems really low, and really only 1% of them actually write their goals down. To me, that sounds extremely low. But we do know that what a dream that's not written down is
No,
just a
no, a
wish.
goal
A
that's
goal that's not written down is just a dream, right? It's just a wish, right?
yeah, it's just a goal without a plan. That's what it
Without a
was. A
plan.
goal without
Yeah.
a plan is simply a wish. And
Yeah.
so I guess defining what a goal is. So maybe in that article that you read, they're defining a goal as something that you aspire or to achieve,
Yeah.
right? But then they have a plan laid out for how they're going to go about doing it. And so maybe only 3% of the population does that.
Does that? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I know people do New Year's resolutions, right? We're talking about New
Yeah.
Year's, and that's always something that people try to do. Oh, I'm going to lose weight, or I'm going to start reading books, or I'm going to do those things. I was also reading something that talked about New Year's resolutions, and again, this is not a blog, a podcast on that. 35% of people that have New Year's resolutions, they give them up after a week.
Wow.
It's amazing.
1 week?
But I can actually believe it. Because you think about all the people that go into when they get their fitness membership, they're in the gym the first thing in the morning on January 2nd. And and all the machines are packed, but then just wait a week. Wait a
week. The gym will be empty again, right? It'll be back to the people that have been consistent the whole year.
Yeah, it's not a consistent thing for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, for us, honey, I think what we're going to try to get our listeners to do is set goals as a couple, right? And so not necessarily saying that they shouldn't set individual goals, but setting goals as a couple is such an intimate experience. I mean, you and I know that, right? Like when we talk about our dreams, when we talk about the things that are important to us as an individual, and then we bring it together, right, to one another. So that allows us to not just set, our own individual goals, but we get to combine those goals and create something as a couple. It is probably one of the most intimate experience that you and I go through.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the reasons I push this so hard is because I know that intimacy or connection, right? The connection is what so many couples are lacking. And if they just took the time to sit together uninterrupted, a quiet evening, or maybe they could do like what we do, check into a hotel overnight and have someone else taking care of the kids for them, and they have the opportunity to really just talk from their hearts, gosh, the level of connection that can come from that, from that simple exercise is huge.
It's huge, right?
It's absolutely huge. And it gives us something like when we're talking about individual goals, right? Like me knowing the dreams that you have, the things that you are aspiring to achieve, right? Whether in your lifetime or even just in the upcoming year, it gives me an idea of ways I can support you.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Well, if you don't know what I'm trying to accomplish, then how could you support me?
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And it's the same way from your perspective. And later on, we'll talk about like the different categories that we'll talk through. But it's an amazing thing to know that I'm on this journey. If it's an individual thing that we're trying to do on this journey, but you know what, my wife is right there by my side. If there's any support that I might need, or any challenges that I might come across that I need a little bit of help with, or to consult with, or whatever, she already knows, because we talked about it already.
Yeah. And it shows me how to show up for you. Right. And so even though it's an individual goal, because a lot of couples tell me, at times they feel like they're living parallel lives, like they have, two completely separate lives that they're living side by side because they've set individual goals. There's nothing wrong with setting individual goals, but talking through them with one another so that you involve the other person makes it a lot more intimate. Right. And it, in a sense, almost ends up being like a couple goal, right? Because you're rooting each other on, you're cheering each other on. And then from your individual goals, you can also set, your family goals, your couple goals, what it is that you guys are looking to achieve together.
But what about the commitment side of things? You talked about intimacy, right?
Yeah.
You talked about those types of things, and it's amazing because when we start thinking about not just the short stuff, but talking about 10 years down the road, like, okay, this is what we plan on doing, or this is what we plan on accomplishing in 2033.
Yeah.
right? Whatever that is. So what does that say? It says that number one, yes, we have the forethought to be planning out that far as our future goes, but I plan on being here in 10 years,
Exactly.
right? And so when we start thinking about, especially from a man's perspective, to his wife that he's supposed to protect, that he's supposed to provide a secure environment, what does that say to my wife?
Oh, that's telling me you're not going anywhere.
Right.
That you envision us being together even 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, because you're already making plans for what you and I will be doing together decades from today.
Yeah.
And so that's sexy.
I like that.
I don't know how else to say it, but I think
sexy.
that's sexy. Like as a woman,
you heard
when
it,
we talk about like our areas of insecurity, we just want our husbands, like we want to feel like you would choose us over and over again,
every
right?
time.
Like you would choose me every single time. And the fact that you're making plans 30 years from now with me, not like by yourself, like I'm going to go sail around the world alone. Like it's just, not that I would ever want to go sailing around the world like on a little boat.
You would ever want to do that anyway.
A cruise ship.
If you ever said that was a plan, I'm like, okay, we can scrap that one.
Yeah, a cruise ship I could do, but like, if you had some crazy idea that you wanted to break some world record, I'd be like, honey,
buy a sailboat.
Yeah, exactly.
To start going. Right.
But anyways, the point is, that provides me with a sense of security, like a feeling of security that is unmatched. And so I would really, really appreciate that. So let's talk about how, right? Like how do we set goals? Right. Because I'd like to take the listeners through our process, right? Like what it is that we do. And how we go about setting goals. First of all, we talk about SMART goals.
Right. And so when we start talking about the SMART aspect of it is, and then for those who, I'm sure everybody's heard a version of this before, but they need to be specific, right? So not just a general thing like, oh, I want to be successful. Okay, well, how do you want to be successful, right? And so really thinking about specific things that you want to accomplish.
And the why behind it.
And the why.
I am really big about the why.
Yeah. We talked about that last night.
Yeah, we did. What
is your why? Right. And that really helps you to it's more of a motivating thing, because every day when you wake up in the morning, you have to have a reason why you are waking up. What is because you're tired, you had a bunch of stuff that you had to do yesterday, and your body hurts or whatever it is. Like what's motivating you to push past all that stuff and still try set forward to accomplish those goals that you set, that you put on paper. So specific, measurable, right? So being able to track your own progress. Is there a way to measure your progress on accomplishing these goals? And is it achievable? One of the stats that I read before is that 90% of individuals perform better when goals were relevant and they're challenging, right? So relevant basically means, hey, I can accomplish this, but it is a little bit further than that's in my comfort zone, right? So if you're challenging yourself, that's a good thing, because you're moving past and you're doing more than you ever thought you would.
Yeah, well, so are we on achievable, honey?
Achievable right now.
Okay. So your goal should be realistic and possible. But the next one, so we've got specific, we have measurable, we have achievable, and then you mentioned relevant. So relevant to me is while your goal should matter to you, it should also align with other relevant goals. Like, for example, if you have goals that you set for yourself, does it get in the way or support your spouse's goals? Right? Like if your goal is to live in Antarctica and your spouse's goal is to live in the Bahamas, like those are, it won't, it won't work. You guys,
I think Bahamas is probably mine.
Mine is definitely not Antarctica. But the point is, does it match?
Yeah.
Right? Is it, does it align with other goals that you have? Because even setting your own individual goals, if you have like this one outlying, an outlier, like a goal that's just way out there that would get in the way of you achieving your other goals, then maybe you need to rethink that, right? Not to say give up on it, but just rethink it. There's got to be a way for you to be able to set goals where they're not contradicting or conflicting with one another.
Right. I agree.
And then the last one is
last one is time bound. So time bound is the most important piece, I think. I mean, when we really think about the time aspect of it, when you put a timeline on anything, now you know, all right, I have a deadline. I need to accomplish this by X amount of time or by this date. All right, well, what do I need to do to make sure that I do that? Halfway through, am I halfway to my goal? If I'm not, I need to speed this thing up, because if I don't, I'm not going to be able to accomplish it. So it puts a little bit of urgency on it, but it's also accountability, and I think that's an important piece, because we as people, as human beings, tend to get complacent sometimes. We might not necessarily think about it as seriously if there wasn't a time aspect to it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think even for me, like my personality, I need something broken down into smaller pieces, right? And so knowing the deadline, if you will, I'm using air quotes here, but knowing the deadline helps me to break it down into pieces that I can do each day. Right. I'm reading Atomic Habits right now by James Clear, and I love that book. But what are the little things I can do today that will help me achieve that goal that I'm setting for 5 years from now, for a year from now?
There's 168 hours in a week.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I will leave that math to you because.
And so, if you break it down into daily tasks and weekly tasks, then that really helps you to take little baby steps every day.
Yeah.
To make sure that you are kind of every day progressing towards that goal that you have.
Absolutely. So we've got, setting SMART goals. Goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And I think this one is actually really important to us, and is how we go about setting our goals, but we write them down. Like, we don't just talk about them. It's not like we're just sitting across the dinner table from each other and just having conversations about our goals, because goals, that it's been shown that you are 43% more likely to accomplish your goals when you write them down and complete them with action steps, right? Like, write down your goals and then the action steps you're going to take to achieve them, than by simply thinking or talking about them.
Right.
And so that's really important. So we always write down our goals. And in fact, we're going to add a link to the show notes. I created a free couples goal setting template that you can just fill in. And it has all this information about, setting SMART goals and common goal categories to set and how to determine what your goals should be. It's got all that in there, plus where you can actually type in or write in, depending on, what your preference is, your goals. And so we'll put a link to that in the show notes below. But babe, so
categories.
Yeah. The common goal categories that we tend to set. Now, this is for us. This is for our family. You could do pretty much anything you want, but for us, we set our spiritual goals.
Spiritual goals are so individual and as a couple
and as a couple.
Family. Yeah.
Yep. And that is, growing in our walk and our relationship with God, right? Our own personal goal. And then, Duane, as the spiritual leader of the family, always tries to set something for the whole family, for him and I to do together, whether it's praying together more regularly or reading a devotional together or whatever it might be.
Might have a study that we might want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Something like that. But to be honest, it always involves prayer.
It always involves prayer.
If you're doing anything, or if you're only doing one thing as a couple, it needs to be praying often.
I agree.
Together. Right?
I agree. Not just for dinner.
Yeah. Not just for dinner. Thank you, Lord, for this food. Amen.
So the second common goal. Sorry.
So I don't know if I don't have them in order in my head, but I have spiritual. I have our personal, financial stuff.
Oh, okay. So we have that broken down. So we have the personal development, right? So that is like our health and fitness goals, or our new skills. Hobbies. Duane is an avid golfer, and
I wouldn't call it avid. I just like it.
Well, no, golf. he speaks like a golfer.
Mm-hmm.
He loves golf,
Mm-hmm.
but he has come to the realization, well, I don't know why, but he thinks he needs to get better.
I do.
And so one of his goals
Why
this
wouldn't
year,
I? I want to shoot better. I want to
I
beat
know,
all my friends.
well, no, he has this goal of playing in the senior
Senior
PGA
PGA. I'm playing in the
someday.
Champions Tour. I'm 47 years old, so I
And
got 3 years.
yeah, we're getting closer and closer to the senior,
Mm-hmm.
qualifying for the senior PGA,
Yeah.
but he doesn't feel he's there yet. So
No,
he
not at
is
all. Not
working
even close.
on improving in that area, or maybe education, right? So this all falls under personal development. So we have spiritual, we have personal development, we have our professional and career
Right.
goals.
Yep.
We have finances, and
Yep.
finances could be, your savings, how you budget, investments, your retirement, looking
Mm-hmm.
into your future, how you want to retire. We always have the category of our marriage
Yeah.
and our family, right? Duane and I, even as a marriage and relationship coach, I mean, we do everything that we tell everyone to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We are not exempt from it. And there is no marriage counselor, therapist, coach, anyone out there that will tell you that just because they hold that title, that they don't have to do any of the things that they teach other
Yeah.
people. It is probably because we have that title and we do
Mm-hmm.
this work that we know how essential it is,
Mm-hmm.
that we continue putting in the work, that we continue investing in our relationship. And which is why we're in a hotel room right
Yeah.
now.
Well, we know
Right.
it works too. I mean, we know it works. We've had success with it. It's been really good for our relationship. So why not continue it? I mean, if we've been able to have some success with it, and not only that, everyone, we're trying to teach these things to our kids. And I
Absolutely.
think that's like the most important piece. I would say, when we sat down at the table a few times and talked about what are your goals for this year with our
With our
kids.
children. Yeah.
And it could be obviously school related. What do you want to accomplish? I want to get an A. Okay, so how are you going to get that A? And start thinking about it from that perspective. And maybe they have sports goals and things like that, but and also spiritual stuff too. So I think it's not only just a great idea for you as a couple, but it's great for the whole family as well. So that's kind of what we do when we sit down and we talk about the family part of it, is like what do we want our family to look like? Where do we see our family going right now, and what direction? And if it's not going in the right direction, then how do we kind of change that trajectory and move it towards where we want it to be at?
Yeah, and we have these conversations regarding our family with each other, with Duane and I. We kind of take a temperature of how we think our kids are doing.
Mm-hmm.
We have 6 of them, and so it's not always easy to just kind of pinpoint how every single one of them is doing. And so it's important that we take the time to sit together and just say, okay, so how are you feeling about this child? What
Mm-hmm.
do you think they're going through?
Mm-hmm.
And then at the same time, or actually after that, we have conversations with the kids themselves.
Yeah.
And we have conversations as a family. We have conversations individually.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got spiritual,
Mm-hmm.
our professional career, our finances, our marriage and our family, our personal development. And then the last category that we set goals for are like major purchases.
Yeah.
Duane and I happen to really enjoy, I make it sound like I've got an enterprise, but we dabble in real estate investing.
Yeah.
And
a dabble that we want to make more of a big old giant blot, right? We want to make it a bigger thing in our lives. And right now it's kind of the first step. That's in it. The genesis was during these meetings, our business meetings that we have. And we kind of set the goal to purchase one of those. And we did that, and it's been going well, but now we're kind of setting plans to buy more.
Yep, to do more. And the major purchases can be, investment property. It could be your first home or a new home. It could be a car, because Lord knows how expensive cars are these days. And so it's almost like buying a piece of property. Some of these cars, or maybe a home remodel, whatever it might be, anything that will require a major financial investment can be a goal category.
Yeah.
So and before we finish today, I just want to touch on, like, there's people out there, and I know this because they have mentioned it to me, where they feel like they don't even like, they love the idea of setting goals together as a couple. They get how intimate and connecting that whole experience is, and they even understand, they understand the importance of it, but they don't really know as a couple whether what type of goals they should set.
Right.
And it could be because they're newlyweds, right? They're still trying to get to know each other, or maybe they've been disconnected for so long, or they've never really had these conversations. They don't know each other's dreams and they don't know where to begin. Right. And so what I would recommend to those couples is, first of all, pray.
Yes.
Pray
Always.
and ask for God's direction and guidance, right? As you set the goal, and then, or the goals, hopefully it's more than one. And then take out a piece of paper, like both of you take out your own piece of paper, take out your own pen, and make a list, like a separate list, and without really thinking too hard about them, but make a list of what is most important to you. Right? What's most important to you. And then once you guys are done making that list of, however many items, talk about them. Talk about each item and talk about why it's important to you, and start looking for themes in your answers. Right? What's popping out? Exactly. Common themes, like patterns that you're seeing. What's showing up more than once? Right? Because the themes you identify, you'll find that they reflect your values and what's most important to you. Right. Like,
and it might surprise you, because the things that you thought might be important to your spouse are totally different. You're like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Right. Let's talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, last night, when, even though Duane and I have been doing this for a really long time, and we tend to we have an understanding of what each other's goals are, right? I was going to say should be, but there's no should, but what they are. Last night, there was a word that kept coming up for 2023 for us, and that word was order. Right? Because we still kind of did this little, brain dumping. And order is something that we both crave for 2023, right? Because God is not the God of chaos. He created the world in the universe and everything in it in a very orderly fashion. And so we can't help but crave that as well.
Right. And order wasn't just thinking about just cleanliness, right? Or just organization. But it is the planning aspect of it too.
Yeah, the planning aspect of it all.
Order comes from knowing where you're going. No, order comes from understanding where your trajectory is, and knowing and being able to assess where you are compared to where you want to be.
Yep. Absolutely. And so when you start to see what your values are and what's most important to you, this is where you should begin your goal setting. Right. You will start identifying shared goals in that list that you guys created, right? Even though you create it individually, you will begin to identify shared goals. You'll also begin to identify individual goals. So use those values to set your goals. Right. And one thing, or a couple things to keep in mind when you are setting these goals is, number one, make them positive. So, like, for example, if better communication is your goal, say something like, we want to improve communication in our marriage. That's a great goal. And then you can make a list of how you plan to do that, versus we don't want to get divorced because we can't communicate. That's kind of negative.
That's a negative. We want to be positive here, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And then realize that whatever season of life you may be in, or circumstances that you're in, it's going to change. Right. And so your goals likely will too. So and that's perfectly okay. Right. The goals that you set for 10 years from now, and you said it last year, may change a little bit when, you and your spouse go through different seasons in life.
And it's okay to revisit it. I mean, I think it's a very important to revisit your goals, and sometimes even revise them based on the circumstances that are happening. It could be a sickness that happens in the family. It could be, somebody gets hurt or something happens. That's all. These are all negative ones, but it could be positive, right? I mean, they're you could have some kind of positive thing that happens.
You could win $1 million in the lottery.
$1 million in the lottery. You still have to play the lottery in order to win that $1 million,
which we don't.
Scratch ticket. But if you do that, then heck, yes, you change your plans because that's a windfall that you did not expect, or maybe you have an inheritance or something like that, or
Yeah.
something like So all these things happen, and it's okay to revise it. We just make sure that you continue to stick to the specific aspects of goal planning, making it still having it time bound, still making it realistic, still making it repeatable.
And write it down.
And write it down.
Write it down so that you and your spouse can revisit this. We recommend maybe 3 months later or midway through the year, checking to see if you guys are on track to accomplishing your goals.
Yeah.
So we hope that this episode has been helpful for you guys, and we highly, highly encourage you to set goals as a couple. There's very few things that you can do together that will create more intimacy and connection, and just the communication that takes place. It is exactly what so many couples are needing right now.
Right.
And to help you out, again, we have put a link to a free template that we created, Goal Settings for Couples, I think is the name of it. Just check it out. The link is in the show notes below. All right. Well, you guys take care. And we hope that this has brought you closer to having that purpose-driven marriage.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.